Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 90 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. This time we're having a great episode, an interview with esports immigration attorney Genie Doi. She specializes in the niche area of esports, which is growing in popularity and is going to be probably the biggest sports thing for the next generation coming up. But before getting started with that, I wanted to remind everybody that I'm having a special Q&A session, a call-in on May 31st at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. Just email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. That's info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com to RSVP. I'm going to keep the group small for lawyers and law students, lawyers that are thinking about doing immigration or existing immigration attorneys and law students interested in this area to focus on practice management, having the business of immigration law as a solo style or small firm, and also some law. Now, the things I've mentioned, I'm going to talk about social media on the business practice side, and on the legal practice side, talking about the 90-day rule, but it's going to be more open-ended. I'm happy to discuss and answer questions in this group call. Again, just email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com to RSVP for that. Do it sooner rather than later because it's a small group and it's going to fill up soon. Finally, if you're listening to this on iTunes or other podcast services, please, leave a 5-star review, a like, and a good comment. And also subscribe and follow my YouTube channel, Immigration Lawyers channel on YouTube, which has the whole episode videotape as well as cutouts of each episode, really highlighting certain segments that are shorter. So if you can't listen to the whole thing, you listen to at least smaller parts, maybe a minute, 2, 3, 4 minutes of important topics and discussions that I have with my guests, and practice pointers from the solo practice pointer episodes that I have to help you and your practice grow and become more successful immigration attorney. So without further ado, let's get it started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqklaw.com. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I have a really special guest today, Genie Doi.
Hi.
Genie Doi is an immigration attorney as well, and it's a specialty and focus on esports, so we'll get into that. But before that, why don't you tell us more about yourself and how you got involved in immigration?
Sure. My name is Genie. I am an immigration attorney, and I started my solo practice just a little over a year ago. How I got started in immigration, literally fell into it. It was my first internship in law school. The advice I got when I started law school was just get your experience, hands-on experience, in as many different areas of law as you can, and then find the one that vibes with you.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that the first internship I had was in immigration, and I just kind of fell in love with it. It really made sense to me, and my background, since I'm a child of immigrants. I spoke a couple languages, and just I felt like it was the only area of law where I can have direct access to clients and like help a person directly, whereas the other areas of law I was working in were like very very far removed from actual contact with human beings.
Yeah.
So I just fell in love with immigration, stuck with it throughout the years, and yeah, that's how I got my start in immigration.
Yeah, if you like deal with people, and some people don't want to deal with people, but if you're interested in
What?
talking, you're interested in people and helping them directly,
Yeah.
immigration is like the best field for that.
Absolutely.
What kind of work internship was it? Was it a private firm, solo, nonprofit?
Sure. My first immigration internship was with, it was a small partnership in Koreatown. It was just two partners, a couple paralegals, and one of the partners did primarily family and removal defense, and then the other partner did only immigration or business immigration. And it just so happened that I worked primarily with him. So I got most of my experience in business immigration, and again, I just fell in love with it and stuck with it.
It's really important to get that business immigration experience, it's hard to jump into it because it's kind of
Yeah.
like daunting to be like, what am I supposed to
Yes.
do? And seeing someone do it once over, it just really helps out.
Absolutely.
And what kind of cases would they handle typically? The
It
business
was,
immigration side.
yeah, it was a small firm, so anything and everything. I literally did everything in the alphabet. We did a B1, B2, we did E1, E2, we did F1, change of status, we did J's, K's, H, L, literally we did everything in the alphabet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Having the full rounded experience,
Mhm.
especially even if you're gonna niche out later, just
Yeah.
you gotta have your hand, get your feet wet in a little bit of everything. Now, you said you speak a couple languages. What languages do you speak?
Obviously I speak English, born and raised in the United States.
Where part of town are you from? From Los Angeles?
Yeah, so I was born in San Francisco, but spent like most of my life in Southern California. So I'm a native Californian. My parents are from Korea, so I speak Korean. My husband is from Japan, so I speak Japanese. I grew up in Southern California.
But it's
so
not that typical if you just
Oh.
go to the side.
Okay,
How did you pick up
okay.
Japanese?
So I studied Japanese for a year in college because at UCLA, like you have to take a foreign language to get political science credits.
I see.
And so I picked Japanese because it was the easiest language for me. Like grammatically, it's identical to Korean. So it's kind of like Spanish if you're a native English speaker. Like you don't really have to study that much to get a passing grade.
Yeah.
So that's why I took Japanese, but then I ended up studying abroad and like met a Japanese dude and his English was terrible, so we had to like I had to learn Japanese to talk to him. Um, and now we're married and I'm fluent in Japanese. So
Do you speak Japanese at home?
yeah, we speak Japanese at home.
How old is you have a son or daughter?
Son,
How old is he?
he's 2.
Okay, so do you
Yeah.
speak Japanese with him at home?
We're just starting to. So our pediatrician said like use the one parent one language method. So I speak to him only in English. My husband speaks to him only in Japanese. My parents speak to my son only in Korean. So we're trying to like get him to be trilingual early
Yeah.
on.
What's harder, Korean or Japanese? It's kind of hard to say because you probably grew up in Korean, so it's
Yeah.
natural. But
I will tell you hands down, Korean is easier. Korean is actually a very interesting Asian language in that it has an alphabet very similar to English. Like you put consonants and vowels together. So even if you don't know what the word means, you can actually pronounce it and speak it. Korean is actually very easy for non-Asian people to learn. Whereas in Japanese, there are 3 different alphabets. One of them, which contains like over 10,000 Chinese characters. So I would say Japanese is very difficult to learn. So if you're anyone out there who's interested in learning these languages, learn Korean first and then do Japanese.
Yeah.
It is 10 times easier.
I've heard you can pick up the Korean alphabet like in a couple hours. It's like pretty simple.
Yes, absolutely. So this is random, but the king who invented the Korean language, he wanted it to be an accessible language to
That's
the
smart.
peasants. Like
Yeah.
he wanted his people to be literate, and
Yeah.
so he actually made the Korean alphabet so easy that even peasants who didn't go to like Confucian theological school could understand it.
It's the opposite of what the Chinese did to keep the knowledge away
Exactly.
from them.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a follow up but we'll go off on a tangent about languages. That would be interesting. So, how has having a second and third language helped you in your practice? Is it a cost for the cases or not really?
I would say it has absolutely helped me. Like I don't generally conduct business or consultations in a foreign language with my clients because I tell my clients like, look, yes, I do speak Korean and Japanese and Spanish, and so I will understand you if you speak to me in those languages. But the legal advice that I'm going to give you, it's very important that I am clear and communicating accurately. And for me, English is my best language. And so I am only going to speak to you in Korean when I am, or in English when I am trying to communicate something with legal consequences. And please provide your own interpreter.
Yeah.
And the benefit is I can correct the interpreter if they're being, if they're not being accurate in the translation. But I think it does help in providing kind of a comfort level with my English speaking or my Korean speaking, Japanese speaking, or Spanish speaking clients, just knowing that they can speak in their a language that's most comfortable to them, knowing that I'm going to understand them, um, and also just culturally, like knowing that I come from a Korean family or I come from a Japanese family, that that I'm going to understand where they're coming from culturally. It just creates that like it brings down a wall
Yeah.
into being honest and comfortable with your attorney. So
Is there a thing in Korean culture where they will pull a wall up if until they're comfortable they won't share information or?
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting though. I think a wall immediately goes up based on the fact that I'm a woman,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm young, and um, yeah, those two things. So, for example, in East Asian cultures, usually if you're older and you're a male and you're an attorney, you get more respect. So it's kind of the typical situation. Or if I walk into a room, people think I'm the secretary or the receptionist bringing them coffee. So my kind of way to get around that is when I meet, those types of clients, I will immediately stick out my hand and introduce myself um, in English, saying, hi, my name is Jeannie, I'm the attorney. And I think speaking English
Mm-hmm.
kind of brings down that wall. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, she's different. She's an American. I can't treat her like I would treat a Korean woman
Yeah.
or a Japanese woman. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a wall, being that I'm female, being that I'm young. Um, but then I can bring it down immediately by distinguishing myself as I'm an American and I demand a certain level of respect. So.
Yeah. I do the same because I with Iranian clients because they have one expectation that I'm gonna give discounts because they're also Iranian, and then another thing is they'll expect me to do shady stuff because like, oh, it's one
Yes,
of us. So immediately I'm
exactly.
like, I'm Persian, but I'm American, and they always
Yeah,
think Americans by the book, and so
that's
that
so
might
funny.
scare off some people. But I just put down, hi, I'm John, nice to meet you, and then I'll
Exactly.
talk Farsi or something with them. Yeah.
Yeah, so same with, Koreans, to be frank, will you give me a discount because, we're brothers, we're sisters, or will you um, do something that is kind of not legal?
Yeah.
And I am just absolutely black and white about that. Like, sorry, that's against the law. I won't
Yeah.
do that. But my other lawyer, my K-Town lawyer, said that I could do it, and I'm like, well, that's clearly that's against the law, and I can't break my license.
Yeah.
Tells me, and the law tells me that I can't break the law, so I'm not going to do that for you. Go to your K-Town attorney if you want to break the law. So.
Not that all K-Town attorneys are bad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So what was the progression? So I mean, you're in law school, you got experience there. What was the experience in law school other than that first one, and then worked your way into getting into solo practice?
Sure. So, did a couple internships and externships in law school with a range of experiences. Like I said, I interned at a small solo practice. I also did an externship with the Legal Aid Foundation. Um, I did like a I worked full time during law school at various business immigration law firms.
So you got deep into this. You saw what you liked and
I
got into it.
did.
Yeah.
I saw what I liked, and part of it was necessity. I was going to law school part time at night. I needed to pay the bills during the day, and so I was like, well, I might as well make pay
Yeah.
my bills while gaining experience that's going to pay my bills after law school. So I worked full time at law firms, business immigration law firms while I was in law school, so that by the time I graduated, I just stayed on at the firm that I was working with throughout law school. Um, then I passed the bar, stayed on with them as an associate. Um, but that firm was had a niche, and their niche was Japanese clients, um, and primarily E2s. But I wanted to branch out into working with non-Japanese clients, and I wanted to gain more experience in, I don't know, maybe EB5
Yeah.
or more of the complex perms, or do more interesting O1s or EB1s, or maybe even dabble in like asylum or removal defense. Um, so I left that firm to go to, quote unquote, bigger immigration law firm in downtown LA that had a full full service practice. They did everything from EB-5 to removal defense. Um, but I was only there for 4 months. It just wasn't a good fit for me. And even though I thought, okay, at a big firm, I'm going to be able to get exposure to a wide variety of fields, that's really not how it works in a
It's
big
still
firm.
the same. You get put in one
Right.
place. Yeah.
They will immediately recognize in you, oh, Jeannie, like your forte is in this area, and then you will never be able to get out of that area. They will just kind of use and abuse you repeatedly for that specific thing. And anytime you try to pipe in and say like, hey, I'd really like to tag team, this removal case or this humanitarian pro bono case with this other attorney, it's like, yeah, well, you need to bill certain hours, and those hours, don't make any money for the firm.
Yeah.
So I left that firm to go work for a tech startup as their in-house counsel, which
I
is
mean,
like,
how big? I mean, were you doing non-immigration stuff too as in-house? Okay.
yeah, so I was doing like the firm's H-1Bs or the startup's H-1Bs and J-1s, and also advising them on like general employment and labor law, making sure their I-9s were in compliance.
So you work on J1s?
Yes, I do J-1s.
Okay, good, yeah. So I'm touching. It's good to know someone.
Okay, yeah. But I was at the tech startup for 2 years and just got a amazing, I call it like a mini MBA, just learning how to build and grow a business from the ground up. Like we started with 6 employees, and then in the 2 years I was there, we grew it to like over 26 employees. And just learning the ins and outs of like how to build, a corporate culture, how to build a staff, how to build a marketing operation and build a product. Learned all that hands-on, and I would say like the most beneficial thing I learned from that experience was just learning what it is to be my client. Like learning as, a young tech company that's learning to grow and scale rapidly, what tools do they use? What are they experiencing day in, day out? What does their HR look like? What kinds of people are they trying to hire? How fast do they need results? I learned all of those things, and I think those things are helping me be has given me such an edge as a solo practitioner now, because I think, my quote unquote competition out there in terms of other immigration attorneys, they have no clue what, their clients are experiencing day in and day out. Like, I'm sure, before that experience, I would send like an email to my clients with a list of like 11 documents that, you client need to send me before I can start working on your case. And I'm thinking as an attorney at the time, like, why is it taking 2-3 weeks to get back to me when the client needs a visa in like 6 weeks? Well, they need to go through HR. They need to communicate with the foreign national, with the employee. The HR person is not only dealing with immigration; they're dealing with they're putting out a whole bunch of other fires. And so now I know, having been on the other side, I need to help make the process as streamlined, fast, and efficient, put as little on the HR person's plate, on the foreign employee's plate as possible, and just make the process as easy as possible, so that they can just set it and forget it, which is something I think a lot of immigration attorneys they're just not equipped like to work as fast and as efficient as modern clients need right now.
I've been doing marriage cases for years, and until I got married, I didn't realize how much of a headache it is to register my vote, to get married and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll just say, go and get married and have them do it. Now I'm like, okay, so I have to do this. In LA County, it's like a 2-step system.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just going through it is really important, and that really sets you apart.
Agreed.
So when you were working at those firms, you had one that was an hourly system. I'm familiar downtown, which firm I'm guessing, but like they're pretty strict about the hourly system there.
Yeah.
Did the other firms you work for have that, or is it just salary, just do it and get it done? Yeah.
So all of the other firms I've ever worked at were a salary system, and they billed a client a flat fee, and there was never any expectation of you need to work a certain number of hours a month or And I think that worked well just because in immigration, just the nature of the work that we do, some cases just take an incredible
Yeah.
amount of time, and there's no way you can pass that cost on to the client,
Yeah.
right? Whereas I think the downtown firm, they also charged, I think most of the time, they charged their clients a flat fee. Um, and the only reason why they asked their attorneys to keep track of their quote unquote billable hours was to just get a sense for like profitability on
Yeah.
each
Internal
case. Yeah, just for
statistics. Yeah.
internal, kind of profitability analysis. I do think sometimes they would pass on, hourly fees to certain clients in certain cases. Um, but I'm just not sure that the hourly billing model, yeah, like yes, I understand how important it is to have data to be able to see like what lines of business in your company are more profitable and less profitable. Um, but just
The
the
pressure of having that on employee. Yeah.
yeah, just like the mental pressure of telling an employee like you need to make, X number of hours each month or each year, or else you can't take a vacation, or else you're not going to get your bonus. I just think those were counterproductive in addition to um, the administrative time that it takes
Yeah.
to actually keep track of everything, every call that you're taking, every email that you're writing, every case that you're working on. Um, it's just extremely inefficient. So let's say I would bill for 8 hours a day, I would probably actually spend 10 to 12 hours a day. And so that's 4 hours a day, 2 to 4 hours a day that I'm actually in the office, working extremely hard, but unable to kind of capitalize on it for my career. So
Hmm.
those are just extremely counterproductive, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, one of the best parts of immigration, I mean, the flat rate helps the client because they know how much it costs, but internally
Yeah.
it's not that strict as
Right.
following tracking time. When you talk to corporate lawyers and stuff, the 6 minute increments, all that
Yeah.
stuff is super. They get used to it probably, but I'm
Yeah, yeah.
not into that. I started a couple years ago keeping track just for internal,
Yeah.
like, is this case cost me too much, too less, should I
Yeah.
increase my fees? But it's just like a chart I have internally I keep,
Right.
and in case the client wants to, fire me or
Right.
quit, so at least I know how much to give back. But that's interesting. So, did you start your solo practice after that firm in downtown, or did you
After the startup.
after the startup?
Yeah.
Okay, so one startup, and then what was it? Because going on your own is like a big move,
Yeah.
and it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
To the extent you talk about what happened with the startup that led you to get out of
Sure.
your comfort zone and go into making it solo practice.
A couple things happened which led me to go into solo practice. I had never imagined ever becoming a solo practitioner or going out on my own. Um, my father is a business owner, and just seeing like how much that he's literally working 24 hours a day. Like even in his sleep, he's probably thinking about his business. That's just not a life that I wanted
Yeah.
for myself. But two things happened. One, I had a baby, um, and like the flexibility that parents need in their schedule to raise a small child. Um, I needed a job that would just kind of let me come and go whenever I needed
Yeah.
to. Babies get sick a lot in their first year of life, so I had so many doctor's appointments and whatnot. I needed a job that would let me work from home if and when I needed to, because babies require attention, and can't go back to daycare after they've been sick.
Yeah.
Also, babies cost a lot of money, and so I needed a better paying job. And so when the startup kind of life wasn't meeting those three criteria, um,
Imagine you could be working all day at a startup, especially if
yeah.
you're doing all different fields. It's
Yeah.
just nonstop studying and
Yeah.
talking and meetings and stuff.
Exactly. So it was so much fun, and like I loved my job and I loved the people I was working with, but like I think I loved my baby more and he needed me more.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what kind of job is going to give me that flexibility, give me like unlimited time off, and pay me extremely well? And that job just didn't exist. Like I was like, no one is gonna hire me. I'm completely unhireable. My only choice is to create my own job.
Yeah.
And I just had the privilege of having this license and experience that would enable me to create my own job. And then just the timing so happened that that was the year that President Trump got elected. And throughout his campaign trail, he just was, promising to make good on his promises of just completely upending the immigration infrastructure. And just, so I kind of felt this like spiritual mission of like being on the front lines of fighting back and just putting information out there to the public that there is help and you don't need to be afraid. And you know, there I know there are plenty of bad immigration lawyers out there, but I wanted to kind of be on the side of, the good immigration lawyers, like doing the good, fighting the good fight, doing the good work. So I would say those two things, as scary as it was to go solo, um, when you become a parent, like you just become fearless. Like you do what you got to do
Yeah.
to provide for your kids. So
What was, when you started your firm, what were the first things you had to deal with?
sure. Um, First things first, like I think even before I incorporated, I put out a website just to like my personal calling card, my business card, let the world know like this is who I am, this is what I do, put myself out there. So I got a website.
Did you design yourself or use services, or how did you get that up and running?
I designed it myself. There are plenty of services out there now where you don't need to know how to code. You just kind of drag and drop images and photos. I used WordPress, which is fairly easy to use, um, and I got a website, opened up a bank account. Got my IOLTA account. Incorporated, let the state bar know that I was a solo practitioner now, and just started taking on cases. The first few clients that came in were people that I had known, from my past life, from when I was working at the startup, contacts I had there. So cases were trickling in, and then
Were you taking any and all cases at first, or were you
I was
still?
taking like any and all cases just to pay the bills, just to get the word out there that I do good work, to kind of build up that book of referral business. Um, and as painful as it was to just take like any and all case, and probably put in more hours than I needed to make sure that I'm doing right by the client and doing extremely good work so that they refer me to their friends and whatever. I think that investment of time and energy was worth it in the beginning. Because now, like, this is not a good idea, but I really don't invest a lot in marketing. Um, it's I get a lot of my business just through referrals. Like, hey, Jeannie did a great job. Jeannie was great to work with. Come back to her. So that's kind of how I get my work now.
Interesting. There's one question I want to ask earlier, but to get to it, you were a night student at Loyola. Is that correct? I went to Loyola Law School as well.
Okay.
What do you think about night program? My opinion is, going back, I probably would have done that. It's much better. But how did you like the night program? And I mean, after the second year, you pretty much could be a day student too. It doesn't really make a difference.
I would not have done law school any other way. So I was actually admitted to and enrolled in the full-time program. And then I would say a couple weeks before like law school orientation, I met with some friends from college who are a few years ahead of me at Loyola, and that was kind of at the tail end of the economic downturn, and they were saying, like, I was asking them for advice, like, how do I succeed in law school? They said, forget about succeeding in law school, like focus on having a job after law school. And the best way you can do that is to have experience under your belt by the time you graduate. Instead of just being, green and having all this theoretical knowledge, you can set yourself apart to potential employers by actually knowing like how to be a lawyer, and doing the work. And so I really took their advice to heart. And actually changed my enrollment into the evening program so that I could work full time during the day at law firms, get experience, and go to school at night. And that, again, I had less loans, I had less in student loans. I still had a law degree, it took a year longer, but I had a job lined up for me when I had graduated. And I would say that I probably, even though I've only had my license for 5 years, I probably have 5 more years of experience than other associates who are my age,
Yeah.
simply because I was doing all the work of an attorney while I was in law school. Um, and I the best thing I got from law school though was the people that I was in classes with. They were all people who had full-time jobs or, you know, decades long careers prior to entering law school, who were mothers and fathers and politicians, and just like the diversity of people who I was studying with, and kind of getting, you know, exposure to, developing relationships with, and just learning from their life experience was invaluable. And they're still like some of my best friends today, referring me cases today, sharing parenting advice today. Um, Whereas, kind of a weird consensus I get from people who went to like traditional full time 3 year law school is they made a lot of enemies. Like
It's pretty much
it's
like high school over again.
yeah, it's so competitive. Like everyone is still like, you know, they came straight out of college and they're just kind of focused on like gunning through law school and kind of living the like the movie star life of like, you know, Suits or one of those,
Yeah.
kind of Hollywood image of what it is to be a lawyer. I had the exact opposite experience in law school. Just I met extremely humble, hardworking, like real people who, I'm still friends with today. So
So what are the types of cases that are your primary go-to kind of cases that you like to focus on?
um, I primarily do, P1 visas
Oh, interesting.
for esports players. Esports is professional video game competition. Um, and P1s are basically for professional athletes. Um, and some people may argue with me and say playing video games is not an athletic competition, but according to the regulations, um, my clients are absolutely qualified to be categorized as professional athletes. So I work mostly with, um, clients, teams, organizations, owners in the esports industry. Um, Again, I said I primarily do P1s, I do some O1s, I will do green cards.
What is the difference between an O and a P?
So an O1 is for individuals of extraordinary ability. So you have to meet 3 of these 8 regulatory criteria showing that to prove that you are an individual of extraordinary ability. Examples of those criteria are you've made a higher than average salary, or you've been written about in the media, you've, you know, worked for organizations that are, you know, extremely well known. Whereas a P1 is strictly for athletes. There are a couple different types of P1s. Um, One is professional, called a professional athlete, where if you're simply signed to a team that plays in a league that generates more than $10 million, you just kind of automatically get the visa. Good examples are like NBA, MLB. Those
Yeah.
leagues clearly generate more than 10 million a year. Um, but esports is so new, um, and so even though many of the leagues that I work with are generating more than 10 million a year, USCIS has actually come back in recent months saying we actually don't believe the financial statement you submitted. Um, so this application doesn't qualify for professional athlete status, which has forced me to focus on a second category of P1, which is called internationally recognized athlete. And it's kind of similar to the O1, where you have to meet 2 of 7 regulatory criteria, some of them being, you have a letter from an official of your leagues saying, you know, this person is internationally recognized, or you've been written about in the sports media, or you've competed on a national team in an international competition. Um, and those criteria readily apply to esports players. So I've been relying more and more on internationally recognized athlete than professional athlete.
Do you need that statement for a P that you need for an O from a like a union in the U.S. You need that for pieces as well?
Yes, absolutely. So P1s do require a consultation letter from a US labor organization or professional association if one is in existence. Um, Interestingly, there are not, again, esports is so new, players have not really had the wherewithal to create professional associations or labor unions. There are a few in existence, and I do have a good relationship with them, and I can say, like, hey, can you please sign this letter saying that you don't object to this player, playing in the United States. But in cases where there is no labor union, I will, submit evidence that there's no organization or U.S. labor organization um, that will sign off on a consultation letter and check the box on the form that says, no, there's no labor org, so a consultation letter is not applicable.
How have you been getting pushback from USCIS about that?
Of course, of course. I would say 9 months ago, it wasn't a problem. Starting about 3 months ago, um, they will push back and say, no, a consultation letter is required. And while I will cite the regulation saying a consultation letter is not required in cases where there's no labor organization, um, just to act in my client's best interest, I'll go get a letter from like a recognized expert in the field um, that will serve as a consultation letter.
Interesting. What other kind of things have you noticed a change happening? I was talking to a partner at a relatively big firm in Santa Monica, and he's like, overnight, all of a sudden, the standard for O1's changed.
Yes.
You've been seeing the same kind of stuff?
Yes, it was literally overnight. I want to say like the third week of January is when this happened. Um, Cases that would have been, overnight approvals for P1s, suddenly I was getting 8-page requests for evidence.
I hate that thick envelope when they come. You're just like, oh man.
For me, I get faxes, and I get fax notification to my smartphone.
Do you do pre and processing?
Yes, all of them.
I don't do O's or P's, I do L's. They stop faxing me stuff. They started faxing. They email it sometimes now or something. Yeah. It's kind of an inconsistency how they deal with this stuff. Yeah.
So I actually called them out. I emailed. I wasn't getting any like notifications, fax notifications, and so I called them out on it and emailed premium processing and said like, hey, I got this RFE in the mail, but you guys didn't fax me, and they emailed me back saying, no, we did fax you on such and such date. Your fax machine is broken. I don't know, like they can't really prove it.
Yeah.
I can't really prove it didn't happen. But yeah, I'll get these faxes in the middle of the night or on the weekend and be like, oh crap, like this is waiting for me on a Monday morning.
Hours of work and who knows what's gonna happen, yeah.
Yeah, so my biggest frustration though is, these RFEs, these 8-page RFEs are kind of not based in reality and not based on the law. They will kind of construe the law in a way that is so strict. It's like, well, 6 months ago, you guys were approving cases based on the same evidence for the same league for a player of the same caliber. Why now are you saying, this is not acceptable? That's really frustrating because the law hasn't changed. The law has not changed.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? That's frustrating. What's more frustrating though is the inconsistency. There's really no legal justification that USCIS could provide other than each officer is a different human being. They maybe have different opinions about esports, or they're taking the regulations to heart in a different manner. So it's really hard for me to explain to clients, like, I'm going to do my best as your lawyer, I'm going to follow the law, but at the end of the day, the decision on your case really rests with the luck of the draw. Like, does your case land on the desk of an officer who's really taking President Trump's Buy American, Hire American policy to heart, or to an officer who is operating in reality? And the randomness just kills me. So
yes, the inconsistency is so frustrating,
Yeah.
and that feeds into how do you structure your contract? Did you used to do free RFEs, or do you have it paid now? How do you prepare for that?
So when I first started my business, I was committed to doing RFEs at no extra charge. So my fees are a little bit higher than I think, the market rate for attorneys in Los Angeles. But that's because I include RFE responses in my legal fee. And for me, I think the motivation is if I do a great job up front, such that the client is not going to get an RFE, that takes more time, more work. And I want to stand by my work. I want to give my clients this guarantee that, like, I stand by my work. So if the government sends a request for evidence because I did shoddy work, I stand by that. But that's simply just not the case anymore. Like, I can present and submit what I feel is a RFE proof petition, but I will still get, like, an RFE or a notice of intent to deny or a denial and have to refile. And up until now, I've actually done I've actually refiled petitions at no cost to my client. Sometimes I'll eat the filing fees.
Wow.
Just because I just felt so strongly that immigration is in the wrong, and it was just kind of like my fight for justice. But just economically, I cannot do that anymore. I'm getting RFE'd for everything. I'm having to refile cases. And so in some situations, I will, not charge my client a new filing fee and just ask them to pay, not charge the client a new legal fee and just ask them to pay the filing fees. But now it's kind of getting ridiculous. I'm just working like day and night to, refile and submitting more creative evidence. Like, my mission right now is to get a letter from the International Olympic Committee saying that, like, the regulations that immigration bases their P1 denials on are just completely preposterous. But I do think that in the coming months, maybe even the coming weeks, that I do need to change my fee structure to say, like, look, if we get a request for evidence, I'm going to have to charge, I don't know, a certain amount to respond to this, just because it's taking so much time and energy to do.
Yeah, what I had to do is the same. I kind of viewed it at first like, well, if I make a mistake, I got to stand by it and do the work. But then I realized it's not your mistake. It's just, it looks, sometimes they get RFEs, it looks like they're just reading someone else's case. It has nothing to do with my case.
Absolutely.
So I put a couple hours free post-filing that says, okay, if it's something where we missed something, I'll do it. But after that, when it becomes clear that it's just USCIS being ridiculous, they got to pay the hourly fee, and that could really go up sometimes. You get 8-page RFE, responding to that, new documents, and then putting aside the work. When you care about your work, the internal frustration, when I get RFE like that, it just maddens me so much. And maybe it's their tactic to anger the immigration lawyers, charge clients a lot, to just dissuade them from even wanting to do something. It might be an internal tactic.
I definitely feel that way, that, some of the denials I've been receiving, there's no reason why they should have been denied, and I feel like they just kind of want to discourage and demoralize people from coming to the United States, which I understand President Trump's Buy American, Hire American policy for certain categories, like maybe the H-1B or the L-1, where, foreign nationals aren't taking American jobs. But pro athletes kind of operate in a different realm, right? I would say that a pro athlete, if they're signed to a team that is competing in the United States, they're not really taking American jobs. They're actually here to entertain the American public, and
they make a league in the U.S., which internationally gets more attention, more money sent here. It's all positive.
Absolutely. Like, if I can quote some of the numbers, the esports industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is generating revenue and creating jobs for Americans. And the fact that foreign athletes are coming here, it's because they are recognized as the best players in the world, and they're playing for American teams. There's no reason not to give them a visa. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Have you had problems with consular processing this too? If you got through USCIS, how's it been dealing with the consulates about this?
For the most part, I would say I've got 100% approval rate if I have an approved petition and I send a client overseas to do their visa interview. Um, I do run practice interviews with my clients before I send them into the consulate. Um, and I I attribute my approval rate to preparing my clients well. I always practice with them a couple questions like, um, explain your job. Like, what is esports? Why do you need a visa? Why do you need to compete in the United States? Those are questions that consular officers may not understand just because the industry is so new.
Yeah.
Another question that I advise my clients on is the use of legalized marijuana. Some of them come from Amsterdam, where marijuana is legal, and so I will go over kind of various scenarios on how do you answer questions related to legalized marijuana, um, and also I will advise them that once they come to the United States and maybe they're living in a state that has legalized marijuana, just to not do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who is saying it, that it's legal, just for to preserve your visa and your immigration status, just to stay away from it.
It's been about a month at every constellation mandatory. I say, I'm not accusing of anything, I'm not reading into your looks or anything, but whoever it is, whatever age, I say, although in California and many states it's legal, federally it's not,
Yes.
so you can't use marijuana, that's it.
Yes.
Your friends could all do it, you shouldn't be around them if they are, but
Yes.
you can't do it, you can't touch it.
Yeah.
What was I gonna add? Oh yeah, so for the O, you kind of need that an agent or something like that. Does the P require the agent as well?
So in O, you don't necessarily need an agent. There are a couple different scenarios for O1s and P1s. And it's a case by case basis. So for example, if you have a foreign team, so let's say an Australian team, they're incorporated in Australia, all the players are Australian, the company's based in Australia, they're paid in Australia, but they need to be in the United States for a year-long competition. They can't come on ESTA because they'd have to travel, they'd have to leave by 90 days. So the right thing to do is to get them a visa to enable them to stay for the duration of the competition. But the problem is they have no corporate entity in the United States by which to file a petition. In a case like that, you actually just need, we call it an agent representing a foreign employer. You basically need kind of any American company that has entered into an agreement with the foreign team saying, we agree to be your agent solely for the purposes of this USCIS petition, and we agree to receive service of process in the case that you get sued. Those two requirements, any company could do that for a foreign employer.
Is there a requirement that they buy a return ticket too once their work's done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Another type of agent scenario is kind of a traditional talent agent kind of mechanism where the purpose of the agent is to find, gigs and events and competitions and performances for the foreign national to be engaged in. But there's various agent scenarios, but I would say the majority of my clients are the traditional employer-employee scenario, where the team itself is going to petition and pay for the beneficiary.
How do teams, first, like you said, it's a year-long competition. How does a year-long competition work in esports, and what are the teams? I've heard there's 4-person teams that do this stuff on these shooting games and stuff, but how does esports look like practically?
So esports is kind of like the bigger umbrella for just professional video game competition, but there are numerous quote unquote sports. So for example, there's Overwatch League, and they only play and compete in the video game Overwatch. There is the League of Legends League, the League Championship Series, and they only play and compete League of Legends. There are leagues in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. They have their own professional circuit. So there are a wide variety of games and wide variety of leagues and competitions. But some of the longer, more established leagues like Overwatch and League of Legends do have year-long competition cycles. So for example, like League of Legends, they start in January They have a spring season that ends, around now, like May, June. And then there's like a regional championship, a mid-season invitational, and then they move into the summer season, which goes from like June to the end of the year. And then they have a world championship where League of Legends in North America competes against the champions from Asia, competes against the champions from Brazil. It's really like.
And does that championship occur in the U.S.?
It changes every year. This year it's going to be in Paris. Last year it was in Korea. But the championship game, they usually change location every single year. But the actual competitions, regular season competitions, happen in Los Angeles. So most of the players live in Los Angeles. They compete every weekend at the arena in Los Angeles. So they do need to be here for the long term.
Are there any times when someone has to come to the U.S. just for the championship? Or are they already here because they're doing league?
Good
my
question.
thing is like, is it worth? It's very frustrating for them if it's just in any kind of field, just to come in for one competition, to go through an O or a P and go through that hassle. I'm guessing, or some people want to do one concert appearance in the U.S. They technically can't use a B1, B2 for that. So, like, do they have to go through the headache of getting a full-on visa? It's like, I mean, they probably just come on a tourist to do it.
Good question. So, for example, League of Legends has this thing called the All-Stars, and that's when it's an invitational where like the most popular, most talented players from all around the world get invited to compete. And this past year, their All-Stars competition was in Las Vegas. And so some of my clients who are based in Korea are like, do I need a visa for this? I'm literally only going to be here for the weekend. Do I need a visa? And my questions were, are you getting paid to come to this competition? They're like, no. The league organizers are just paying for the flight and reimbursing me for expenses. And so I'm like, is there, I'm like, is there any U.S. entity that is paying you to be here? And they're like, no, I'm just coming. And I'm like, all right, you don't need a visa then. It's completely by the book in the regulations to come to compete in a competition and actually compete for prize money, as well as have your reasonable travel expenses reimbursed, so long as you're not being paid for services. Yeah. And in a lot of cases for these like weekend matches, that's not the case. So.
And this last week I've been really trying to find good citations. So what is considered employment, what isn't? And you mentioned, is a U.S. entity paying? How important is the U.S. entity? Whereas if someone's working in the U.S. on the tourist visa, but a foreign entity is paying them, or they're a foreign employer, but they're here on vacation, but they're just spending a lot of days working. Does that start violating it? Because they're getting paid for the act of working while in the U.S.
Right.
That line, I've been trying to find some good information. I haven't been able to find that.
I also haven't been able to find.
I don't think there is.
Yeah,
anything,
I don't think it's in the FAM. I don't think it's in any CBP regulations or policy memo. But I'm just trying to think, like, logically, right?
Yeah.
Rationally. If someone is here in the United States for 6 months on a B1, B2 visa, and they're going into an office every day and performing services that benefit a U.S. company, but maybe that U.S. company's foreign affiliate is the one that's actually paying that person. Yeah. To me, that stinks of unauthorized employment, right?
Well, what about if you're like a Canadian lawyer and you come to the U.S. on vacation, but you're like doing case research, taking consultations on the phone, like when the kids aren't around and stuff?
Sure.
Does that go into unauthorized employment? Because it's your own firm in Canada.
Right. See, in my opinion, I don't think that's unauthorized employment because you're your business, you're a consultant, you're a lawyer, your business is in Canada, you just happen to be working remotely from the United States, while you're here. I would say that's perfectly permissible. Other people may disagree, but I think we just have to think about the spirit of the regulations. Is, are you benefiting a U.S. company
who could have hired some other Americans to do that job? Yeah, definitely I agree with you on the spirit, and that's really how it should be interpreted. But I've talked with some CBP officers who are really making a big deal of it. Is the U.S. company paying you? Some say any work is bad, and it's like, just like the internal USCIS kind of
Yeah.
stuff, it depends on who's going to be the luck of the
Right.
draw, and that's the inconsistency is so frustrating.
Yes.
That wish there was some guidance, even if it's strict guidance, some line that we could see of what
Yeah.
that is, especially with modern technology.
Mhm.
Doing work is different than what it used to be. It's not
Exactly.
going to a factory and then pulling a knob. It's kind of like you're
Yeah.
taking a phone call or an email. Where does that line get
Right.
drawn? Yeah. I had a case where a YouTube star had come in tourist feeds. They shot one of his YouTube videos, like, "Hey, I'm in Santa Monica. It was fun."
Yeah.
Came back on our tourist feeds. They asked, what do you do?" He said, "I do YouTube." And they're like, "Well, have you ever shot a video here?" He's like, "Yeah, I shot one last time I was here." They're like, "Well, YouTube's a U.S. company. They send you a check, and you're here in the U.S. doing it. That's a violation." They put him on a plane. They gave him a voluntary withdrawal, luckily, and then he went and got an O1 and came back.
Okay.
But
that's insane.
Yeah, and they're like, they said kept them for a lot of hours because they had to think about it too. They said, and I talked to the officers actually who signed it years later because this happened like 5 years ago, and I talked to officers. They're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that case. It was like it was a case of first impression for them too." But so if you're YouTube, sorry, you can't come and go. But so many YouTube people visit the U.S. or what if someone's like a travel vlogger or something like that, and is traveling? Hey, look, California. That's technically some CBP officers would consider that a violation.
Exactly.
And probably do. So many YouTube people do it all day. Yeah. So
I think that's an interesting point you bring up, which is extremely relevant to my esports players. So there's in the esports world, streaming is really important, or basically live, like on camera, like this. They will,
on Twitch and stuff like that.
Yeah, on Twitch, or whatever channels, they will basically play their game, any game. A lot of time it's their practice time, and they're just doing it with the camera on them, with their headphones on, even engaging with fans. Fans will watch, tune in.
Some do training, get paid to watch so they can learn and the training kind of stuff too. So,
right. Yeah. So, in a lot of my player contracts, streaming is built in. So the teams will say, okay, you need to stream for 20 hours a month, or you need to stream for 100 hours a month, and USCIS has been pushing back on that, and I think it's because that issue of influencers and like YouTubers, where they don't want people coming here and just kind of making money off of being a YouTuber, right?
Yeah.
So I have to explain in so many different ways to USCIS that streaming for these players, it's part of their contractually obligated duties. It's not just them like making money or a side hustle, making videos to entertain the public. This is actually, number one, it's a permitted promotional activity. Number two, they're contractually obligated to do it by the team. And number three, it's directly related to the competition in that they're actually practicing their sport, just broadcasting it for the world to see. I've actually seen that in so many of my RFEs recently, where they will harp on the word streaming and saying, that's not athleticism, that is entertainment. And then I have to go back and educate them and say, like, no, you clearly don't understand the reality of what esports entails.
And whenever you're like groundbreaking kind of work, you're going to deal with these problems. One thing I should ask you from the beginning is, what got you into esports? Are you related to video games or what?
Good question.
How did that happen?
So my husband is in the industry. He works in video game publishing for a Japanese company. So I've kind of been exposed to video games for however long I've known him, decades.
You've known him for decades?
I think so. We met when
You're not that old.
I know, we met when I was 20, and I'm 33 now. So 13 years. So I've known
okay, 1 decade and
yeah. I played video games growing up. I had a lot of my cousins, and I would argue my brothers too, were weebs. Weebs are just people who are obsessed with like Japanese anime and kind of pop culture. And then, but how I got into esports was I got connected with an esports lawyer. His name is Bryce Blum, and he kind of created the first law firm in the world dedicated to only esports. And he told me that a big pain point that his clients were facing was immigration. That he only does contracts and transactional lawyering, and when his clients often need visa assistance, that he has to send them elsewhere because immigration is not a practice area that he provides. And he just felt that the feedback he was getting from a lot of the clients was, the lawyers he was referring them out to were not fast enough, were not responsive enough, were not communicating enough, and didn't understand esports enough. And I was like, well, I think I can solve all those problems for you. And so we started working together. I joined his team as of counsel. And so now he's able to provide a full service experience for his clients where you can come to him for contracts and negotiations and immigration. And so we're just really committed to, we don't put ourselves out as the best esports lawyers, even though objectively speaking we might be. But we do care about the industry very much, and we do care about being responsive. And at the end of the day, no matter what the result is for the client, we just want them to feel like we did our best job and we communicated and we cared about them. Just want to make them feel good about the legal process, especially because many times our clients are younger. One of my youngest clients was like 17 years old, right? A lot of my clients may not have lived overseas or traveled overseas their entire life, or may not have gone to college or have ever spoken with a lawyer before. And so we just want to make good legal advice and good legal representation accessible and friendly, and we're just really passionate about doing things that support the esports industry as a whole and make sure it's growing on a firm foundation instead of just being this haphazard industry that doesn't go places. So I would say that's also a reason why I do a lot of my refiling, RFE responses to Noids for free, because I'm just really passionate about I want to get esports off the ground and established as a P1 eligible industry. We're actually considering federal litigation right now for one of my esports cases, simply because the decision that USCIS came out with was so wrong. And even if the client can't afford the federal litigation, it's like, well, it's something that we're passionate enough about and will do so much good for the industry if we win, that I just want to do it. I don't care what it costs. I'm just gonna do it.
One thing I'm trying to set up, and I'm trying to set up so many things, and things very relevant, but make a trade group. And part of this podcast is the reason to get immigration lawyers together. So we make our own association and pay dues, so we have the funds to do these lawsuits that we choose. We'll have our own committee and say, okay, this is one to choose. We'll sue on this one. Because clients are afraid to sue, or they don't have the money, and then listen, we'll take care of it. We'll push this, because we need these standards, and it seems federal courts could do it. AAO, hit and miss. You can't really rely on USCIS, the police itself, for these horrendous decisions when they do them. So you need a federal court judge, and we're in the Ninth Circuit, so it's a great place to be.
So on that point, the sports immigration lawyers group that I'm a part of, most of the time we just rant about these bad decisions that came up, but it's happening so much and so often now. We actually, someone just threw out there, what if we formally create an association? Whether, like you said, we have paid dues or whatever, not only to help each other with federal litigation costs, but actually so we can file a class action against USCIS. Because I do think as business immigration lawyers, specifically sports immigration lawyers, we definitely have a cause of action against the federal government for the decisions that they're issuing. They are extremely detrimental to our practice, to our clients, the number of hours, right, that we put in.
I mean, it's just costs you, because fortunately, immigration lawyers don't always get paid that much, and they're hesitant to pay money for dues. But if you pay $50, $100, $200, you're spending thousands of dollars on RFE responses you're not going to get paid back on. So it'll save you money by doing this stuff.
So sports immigration lawyers group, we're serious about organizing,
I guess I'll plug Cassini's group. It's Sports Immigration Lawyers on Facebook. It's a great
Yeah.
group and good
Yeah.
communication. And just started something where we're keeping track of the officers'
Denial.
so we know who these officers are.
We
see
know
if there's
who you are.
consistency.
Yeah.
Because they can do whatever they want, and
Yeah.
their review. I mean, they get so many cases. It's not like supervisor's going to read everything.
Yeah.
They just
Have you noticed though, all of the RFEs that I've gotten in the past few months, there's no officer code. There's no officer number. What about you?
There's inconsistencies. They have different inconsistent way they number themselves, and sometimes there's no code. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be. I mean, they should really put their names on it,
Yeah.
not even a code. We got to know who these people are instead of having the director's name on there. It's ridiculous.
Agreed. Accountability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, briefly, if there was a thing or two in immigration reform that you could throw in there based on things that are important to you, what would they be?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
We have to do another podcast.
Immigration reform, to be quite honest, just gut the whole thing. Honestly, I don't feel like people should need a lawyer to apply for a visa.
Yeah.
It is not like this in any other country in the world. When I lived in Japan for a couple years.
Japan's pretty strict with immigration.
Yeah,
they don't want anyone to come.
Japan is very forthright about, we don't like immigration, we're very strict about immigration. I did not need a lawyer to get my visa to live in Japan. You simply go to the immigration office, you have your documentation, you have your letters, you have your passport, you pay a very small fee, and they give you, a visa stamp. You abide by the law and you turn it in at the end of the year. It was so easy, and it only benefited Japan as a country that I was there, right? Yeah. I would say literally gut the entire immigration regulatory infrastructure that we have now, replace it with stuff that makes sense, and in light of the changing nature of work, in light of the changing nature of the workforce, because simply the regulations we have right now, the reason why people need lawyers is because they don't make any sense. They need smart people like us to kind of weave loopholes or navigate.
Knowing what this really means, even though they use one word, that word doesn't have the definition that's commonly used.
You need the lawyer to jump through all of these administrative bureaucratic hoops. I don't think regular people know how many forms and how many steps it takes to file one H-1B application.
How easy it is to get denied just for
even
if you're correct, or if you're a little bit something that's easily fixable, you're done.
Absolutely, and I know this is gonna put me out of a job by saying this, but I firmly believe that immigration and this process of obtaining a visa and moving to a new country to do good work, or to start a new life, it shouldn't be this hard, it shouldn't be this expensive, it shouldn't be this stressful. I'll say it, immigration lawyers should not be a necessity.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go to Pepperdine after this to give a talk about immigration reform, and my opinion is, at the very least, gut all the non-immigrant visa categories. At most, have like an insurance system they have to pay into, so in case they use medical services or kids use education.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Just let them come and go. If they want to work here, I mean, that's a plus. We have people coming to work. Our population is getting smaller and smaller because people are having kids, and why not bring trained people here? If they want to be strict about who gets citizenship or a lawful permanent residency, we keep those standards there. But non-immigrant visas, the L, which is where I make a lot of my money, shouldn't exist. I mean, why jump through so many hoops? H's, O's. It's so ridiculous to pay that much money to come here for a short trip at a concert and go back.
Agreed.
Why don't we want people coming here doing music and enjoying the concerts? It doesn't make any sense. So, gutting is the way. I think every reform we do is just getting a messed up system and adding some more intricacy to it.
Yes.
And that helps you make money, but I'd rather just do some other part of law or do something else completely. It does. I'm not into this as you're saying, like to squeeze money out of people because we know some loopholes there, or how the law works, or something like that.
Yeah.
There's not even really loopholes in immigration. It's just the statute's written the way it is, and they can fix it easily. So there's no real loopholes in the system. Thanks so much. So, what is the best way for people to get to know about your work and contact you?
Sure. People can find me on most all social media platforms. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My website is www.immigrate.la. You can also find me at esglaw.com, which is where I do all of my esports work. Um,
What is your Twitter handle?
my Twitter handle, I need to change it someday because it's really hard to remember, but it's pure genius. That's pure underscore genie, like my name, GNIEUS.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It's the worst. It's from ages ago, and yeah, it's not easy to remember or spell. But yeah.
We'll have it in the show notes, and your website will be there. So if you do change, people go to the website.
Okay.
Thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.